If you're a homeowner in Florida, you know a pool cage is pretty much a must-have. But here's the thing, that gorgeous enclosure might be hiding some secrets. Secrets that could end up costing you thousands. So let's uncover the most common and costly pool cage mistakes you absolutely need to avoid.
Yeah, I bet you might be looking at your own enclosure right now thinking, nope, not mine. It's perfect. But the reality is, even tiny installation mistakes can lead to leaks, rust, or even serious structural damage. And you probably won't even spot them until a big storm rolls through. And by then, well, it's way too late.
So, let's break it down. We're going to dive into the anatomy of a perfect pool cage by looking at the 4 spots where things usually go wrong. We'll cover structural reinforcement, how it handles water, the fasteners and hardware holding it all together, and finally, setting some realistic expectations from the start. All right, first up, let's talk about the absolute foundation of your pool cage, its structure. Honestly, this is where the most dangerous and, yeah, the most expensive mistakes happen.
You know, a lot of people think that wind just pushes evenly against a pool cage, but that's not how it works at all. During a tropical storm, all that force gets concentrated on specific high-stress joints. Think of it like this. Those joints are like the knuckles of the skeleton. They have to take all the pressure. If they go, the whole thing can come down.
Okay, so this right here shows you the biggest structural mistake we see, skipping joint support. On the left, you've got that standard, unbraced joint. It's just weak, totally vulnerable. But on the right, that's the solution, a code-compliant, engineered gusset plate. That little piece of metal, that's what gives an enclosure the muscle it needs to handle Florida weather. Okay, so we've got the structure down. Now let's move on to the second major problem area, water. An enclosure that can't handle a Florida downpour isn't just a pain, it's a huge liability. So a lot of installers will use standard 5-inch gutters just to save a few bucks. But come on, anyone who's been through a Florida summer knows our rain is, well, it's on a whole other level. Those 5-inch gutters are gonna overflow in a heartbeat, flooding your pool deck. Just upgrading to a 7-inch gutter makes a massive difference in how much water it can handle, and it protects your deck from flooding.
But it's not just about collecting the water, it's about where it goes. And this is a simple choice that can have huge consequences. If you just dump all that water right at the base of your enclosure, or near your house's foundation, that is a recipe for disaster. We're talking erosion, foundation damage, the whole mess. Proper downspouts are designed to channel that water safely away.
All right, next up, let's get into the nitty-gritty, the small stuff that makes a massive difference, the fasteners and hardware. We're literally talking about the nuts and bolts that hold your entire investment together. Okay, before we show you the mistake, we gotta talk about a little science concept called galvanic corrosion. Basically, it's a chemical reaction that happens when you mix different types of metals, especially when you add an electrolyte. And guess what? In Florida, our salty, humid air is the perfect electrolyte. This reaction makes one of the metals rust and fall apart super fast, which, as you can imagine, is terrible for the structure. And here you can see exactly what that looks like. When an installer uses regular old steel screws on an aluminum frame just to save a couple of dollars, they're literally building a weak spot into your cage. The metals react, the screw starts to corrode, and that connection gets weaker and weaker, putting the whole thing at risk.
And this is a huge deal, especially if you live anywhere near the coast in Florida. That salty air is just brutal. Those standard galvanized screws like the one you see here, they're just gonna rust, fail, and leave ugly stains running down your frame. For a cage that's gonna last, stainless steel fasteners are not just a good idea, they're a total non-negotiable.
Okay, and finally, let's talk about the mistakes that can happen before a single screw is ever turned. Falling for those misleading sales promises and just having unrealistic expectations. So here's a big one we hear all the time. The myth is that so-called waterproof screens will keep your lanai bone dry. But the reality? Look, those vinyl laminated screens are great for privacy and keeping leaves out, but they're not a submarine. When you get a heavy Florida downpour, some water is definitely going to get through.
And here's another one that trips people up, and it's all about drainage. A salesperson might hint that the pool cage's gutter system will magically fix all your yard's drainage issues. The reality, though, is that those gutters are only designed to handle the water coming off the enclosure's roof. If your yard has drainage problems, that's a whole separate issue that needs a separate solution, like proper grading.
Okay, so we've gone through the 4 big problem areas. Let's boil this all down into a simple, expert checklist you can use to make sure your investment is protected.
Let's lock these in. Number 1, structure. You have to insist on engineered gusset plates at the joints. Number 2, water. Make sure you're getting 7-inch gutters and that the downspouts route water away from everything. Number 3, hardware. It has to be compatible stainless steel, period.
And finally, number 4, expectations. Know the real limits of what screens and gutters can actually do.
You know, when you look at all these potential issues, it's easy to feel a bit overwhelmed, right? It kind of makes you wonder, are these expensive mistakes just something you have to live with if you own a pool cage in Florida?
And the answer is a big, loud yes. They're absolutely preventable. Almost every single problem we talked about today isn't bad luck. It's the result of cutting corners, a lack of planning, or just plain inexperience. Having the right installer changes everything. And that's exactly why you've got to protect your home by going with real experts. A company like Screen Factory Florida, they've got over 15 years of experience right here in Florida. They make sure every single installation is strictly code compliant and uses the right materials and techniques we've just covered. You know, that professional planning is the difference between a beautiful backyard you can enjoy for years and a future full of headaches. If you want to learn more, you can schedule a free estimate. We've put all the details for you down in the description.